welcome back. I'm Shannon.
I'm Alyssa.
And you are listening to B Movie Bash.
B Movie Bash.
This week we have a special movie going because Alyssa hadn't even seen this one before.
No, I found it today.
Yeah, I feel like that's rare.
Yeah.
Like usually you have like movies on the back burner.
Yeah.
You're like, let me bring out this shit.
I still have a bunch, but I was looking for one and I saw this one and I thought, no, it's got to be this one this week. So
sweet. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I was expecting it to be very different than it was.
Oh, that's always good.
So yeah.
All right. So do you have details? Do you have like ratings or any of that fun stuff? Okay.
We are going to be listening to Imaginary Friend from 2012.
Okay.
It has a 5.7 rating on IMDb and a 53% Rotten Tomatoes score. So 50-50.
Not terrible,
No.
but like maybe not also good.
Not
maybe.
also good, no.
Okay.
Starring Lacey Chabert.
Don't know who that is.
None for Gretchen Wieners by. She's Gretchen Wieners.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
from
okay.
Mean Girls,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
She's the main person?
She's the main person.
Okay.
And I looked up the other people, too, and I didn't really recognize anything else they were in except for the one other female character in the movie. She was on Pretty Little Liars. Oh. And I was like, she doesn't look any different now from when she was in Pretty Little Liars. And I'm like...
I mean, you said this was 2012, right?
Yeah.
So that's not too far.
That's not too far away, yeah. But I didn't even bother to look what year she was in Pretty Little Liars, but yeah. Anyway, though, okay, so yeah, let's get started, right? So we open up to the credits, going off, and it's just like the light of a pool on the ground, just the water moving around and stuff. But then we see two little girls running down a hallway. One's brunette, one's blonde. But they're wearing matching pink dresses and stuff, right? Like they're
The Shining.
Kind of,
cool.
yeah.
Great.
But so the brunette just like randomly stops and turns to the blonde, showing her a doll, and just kind of talking about the doll for a second. We hear glass breaking inside and someone yelling, right? Mm-hmm. A man yelling. And the blonde-haired girl kind of like looks to see what's going on. The brunette grabs her hand and she's like, come with me. And like they run off towards a playhouse and stuff. So they go into the playhouse and they're like, sit down, let's have a tea party. And so they start, sitting and having a tea party. And the brunette says, it's so nice having tea with you. Like, like they do. And yeah. And she's like, let's see, my name will be Daisy and yours will be Lily. And she's like, okay. And the blonde girl's not saying a thing, right? She's not responding at all.
Yeah.
So, but the brunette's just blah, 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 blah. Well, then we flash to the brunette sitting by herself, still talking.
To nothing.
Of course. Right? But then says, we're going to be friends forever, and does a little pinky promise thingy. Oh. And you see the other girl do the pinky promise, right? And you're like, oh, okay, it's her imaginary friend because her dad's an abusive dick.
Great.
Yeah. And then we flash to a little bit later. We're inside the little girl's house, and her parents are eating dinner. And the angry father, who is like, well, who the hell gave you the right to do that to the mother? And she's like, well, I just think, maybe in the morning. He's like, what? Everything will be better in the morning? Fuck, you're stupid. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, was just, like, really mad about it,
Okay.
And, like, slamming his hand on the table. And she's sitting there. The little girl's covering her ears the entire time, right? Aww. Like, just covering her ears because she doesn't want to hear it. But him slamming his hand on the table, like, startles her and stuff. And she's like, I know he is mean. Like, it will be okay. And he's like, what did you just say? And she, so cute. Okay, this little girl just, like, cowering in her seat was, nothing, Daddy. And I was like, my heart. I don't even like children. But that was so cute. Like, well, not cute, but that's so sad. You know, she's adorable. You can't just yell at her like that. Fuck you, right? So, I was like, I'm going to this guy up. Like, stop talking to your kid like that, right? Anyway, but she's like, nothing, Daddy. And he is like, don't you lie to me and stuff. And the mom's like, hey, it's okay. Like, it's fine, And she's just still cowering. And then it shows her later. They do a lot of, like, really quick scenes. Like, most of this movie.
Here's a lot of backstory.
Yeah, this movie is a lot of quick things happening all at once, So I'm really sorry if I seem like I'm jumping back and forth because that's what the movie's doing, yes. But then it shows her sitting in the bathtub. And she's talking to Lily about how she's like, I know he is so mean. I wish it was just you and me, right? And the dad hears this, and he comes in and just starts yelling at her that she doesn't have a little friend and that she's, like, there's no one in there with you and stuff. And so scared, she just kind of, like, ducks under the tub and sees through the water and the bubbles her dad just, like, backhand her mom, like, really hard and stuff. And then it fades away to a woman sitting underwater. It's obviously the little girl grown up now, right?
Yeah.
And you hear, Emma, Emma, from outside the pool, being called over and over and over again. And she gets up out of the water and she sees it's her husband standing at the edge of the pool. So she swims over to him, just kind of like, oh, hi, kind of smiling at him. And he goes, you're all wet.
I was under the fucking water, you dummy.
Yeah, I was swimming.
What?
But she goes, well, good morning to you too, right? And I'm like, but he does a lot of weird shit in this movie. I'm pretty sure this was a Lifetime movie. There's no way this couldn't have been a Lifetime movie, right?
Okay.
But I was just like, this guy's so fucking stupid. And he goes, you're not supposed to be exerting yourself. And she's like, I'm fine. Really, I'm okay. I'm just swimming. Like, it's, Yeah. And I'm like, swimming's not that much of an exertion.
Yeah, it's like
anyway,
the best exercise to do if
Yeah.
you're healing from a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she's just, don't worry. And he's like, that's just what I do, like, kind of cute. Like, oh, then
Okay.
I'm the husband, And she's like, well, then why don't you come in and save me? Kind of, And he is just like, and then gets up and walks away. So, like...
Wow, rejected.
Right. So, then we see him, obviously it seems like he's ready for the day, so he leaves, So we see him driving down a very long, windy road. I don't know where the fuck this place was supposed to be, because of all of the trees, you'd think it was somewhere, like, back easty, but, like, the design of the house, I was like... It's a very, like, like Spain, I guess.
Like
more
stucco and like that kind of stuff.
And, like, a lot of, like, metal decorations and just, like...
Weird.
It was very, like, I don't know, I can't describe it. You'd have to, like, see the house to understand. I don't know what kind of style that is called. It's pretty, but there's so many, like, big, huge trees. It's not deserty in any way. It's very foresty. It's very green. And anyway, so he's driving down this really long, windy road, and we see him... Oh, she heads into the bathroom, and she's just kind of looking at herself in the mirror, like, primping and whatnot, and then decides to take a shower. But while she's doing all of this, she keeps hearing, like, little... children giggling voices and stuff, and she just kind of keeps like turning around like there's nothing there, and she goes to pick up her bottle of medication and is like considering it for a second and then decides against it. She sets it down, like kind of like, I don't need it kind of a look, right?
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, see, the thing I can't figure out about this movie, is it like anti-medication or is it like, because I'm a person who's like, you should be taking medication.
If you need it. If you're having a psychotic break.
Yeah.
Please take some medication.
Yeah. And she just, I'm fine and stuff, right? So then she decides to get in the shower while the husband gets to work, and his secretary is like, Dr. B, what are you doing here? Your first appointment isn't until 11.
No.
And he's like, well, I just wanted to come in and get some reading done. And, I enjoy keeping you company. And she's like, well, don't forget that I get off at noon today. And he's like, I'm planning my whole day around it. I'm like, if you're planning your entire day around this, you've got one appointment coming in?
Yeah.
Because most sessions are like an hour. Yeah. So, like, you've got one person coming in today?
Maybe two.
Yeah.
Depending on what you do.
Yeah. Like.
So you came into work early.
Yeah.
So that you weren't only working for an hour. Because you're leaving with your secretary? Mm-hmm. That's nice.
Yes. So you're like, oh, what a scumbag, Oh, he asked where she wants to go first, and she was like, I don't know, it's just so exciting. There's so much to do today, right? It's a special day. And he's like, yup. And just kind of like goes off into his office and everything. And then we go back to Emma who's now she's out of the shower. She's getting ready, brushing her hair and stuff. Keeps hearing voices. And so she decides to take a pill. So she pops the pill, but as she's like taking it, she hears like a thunk in the hallway. Ooh. And so she's like, what the heck was that? So she goes out and is like calling for Brad, who is her husband.
Of course it is.
Yes. And she's wearing that classic early 2010s, like the tank top with the long thin cardigan over. Like,
oh, my heart.
Oh, yes. Like, and the jeans, and she just looks like everything I want to be. Yes, the classic crazy housewife locked at home all the time. Like, oh man. Look, guys, like, it's my favorite kind of, and if I was skinny, man. It's just so good. Anyway, so then we just kind of see flashes of their day, like just a little montage of things going on. It turns out that she is actually a painter. She's a brilliant painter.
Artist.
I don't know if she's a famous painter, but the description said that she was a brilliant painter. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay, so she just paints then.
Like, so she's just like pretty good then.
Yeah. But I'm like, we saw like 3 of her paintings, and I was like, these were not done by the same person. Like, these definitely were not done by the same person. And some of them were like just very abstract, and others were like, look at my flowers and look at just anyway. But then we hear Brad talking. He's talking to his patient, his 11 o'clock, you know.
Sure.
And he's like, I'm sure that was really hard, you know, like finding out who your true friends are.
Oh, is he a therapist?
He's a therapist.
Oh my God.
Yes. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So he's like, yes, I know it's really hard to find out who your true friends are and stuff. And sometimes it's okay to take a step back. You're not being selfish. You need to take time for yourself. Mm-hmm. And the girl's just like, yeah, you're right. Thank you. You know? And he's like, hand on the knee. You bet.
Ugh.
Rubbing.
Ugh.
And I was like,
Dick.
Yeah. So, but as he's just doing this like layover talk while she's out there painting and stuff. And then it shows him leaving and going to lunch with his secretary. And they kept using really weird music for moments like this and doing kind of like slow-mo-y shots and stuff.
Okay.
And I can't even describe the music other than it's like, dun, 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 like just like very, oh, he's a cheating scumbag, you know it, like, kind of music. But then he's out, you know, and he's getting lunch with his secretary and stuff. And then we see him going to the bank, and there's just they do a lot of scenes really fast, you know. We see him going to the bank, and he goes up to the bank, or the banker who approaches him and is like, oh, Mr. Turner. I think it was Turner.
Mr. So-and-so.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, Mr. So-and-so. He's like, oh, yeah, I need to transfer some money again today. He's like, yes, I do. And he's like, all right, come with me. And so he takes him off. And I'm like, normally bank tellers do that kind of stuff. So to have a banker comes out means that they've got money.
True.
They got money. Which, I mean, their house in general. Like, yeah. But so they're sitting down, and he's like, yeah, I just need to transfer some money from the trust into our checking account so that I can get some bills paid for the day. And he was like, okay. And he goes to pull it up, and there's like an alert that pops up saying that the power of attorney document that the husband has expired. Okay. And I was like, I didn't think those could expire.
I guess.
And that's what he said, too. He was like, I didn't know they could expire. And he goes, well, you'll just have to contact her attorney and get him to, refill it out and stuff. And then we'll get it over, and everything will be taken care of.
So this is the wife's trust fund?
Yes.
That he is taking money from?
Yes.
He's an ass.
But he keeps transferring it into their checkings account, their joint checkings account.
Right.
Yes.
That's better.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so she has access to it if she wants to. She just never leaves the house.
Yeah.
So.
Relatable.
Yep. I know, and I'm like, was 2012 really before Amazon? Because like that would have, I'd have been like in my house all the time. Like, well,
probably not all the Prime shipping and, easy access, I'm sure.
Yep. Anyway.
That was almost 10 years ago. Ew.
Yep. So, he was like, oh, okay, well, he's like, I can't let my wife find out about this because, or like, don't worry about contacting her. I'll talk to her about it because this is the kind of thing that upsets her. She can't handle
her out.
Yeah, he's like, she needs to know that everything is going smoothly with no complications and stuff. And I'm like, well, how could things go smoothly if there were complications?
Yeah. But
whatever. So the banker's like, well, you just need to get a new power of attorney and then we'll get it all taken care of. Don't worry. It's pretty easy. Blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. And then we see Emma laying on the couch. Yeah, she's napping on the couch, dreaming of Lily, playing with Lily when they were little girls, right? Mm-hmm. And suddenly gets startled awake. And it's just like, oh my gosh, okay. We flash back to the husband again. And Brad is at Emma's attorney's office trying to get the power of attorney. I'm pretty sure they gave the attorney a name specifically because they kept having to say power of attorney. Like
too damn long.
Yeah, so Jonathan is the attorney. But I didn't remember that until like I was done taking all my notes and I just didn't want to go through and fix them all. So anyway, so he's at the attorney's office and he's like, so I just need to get another power of attorney. And he goes, well, I'd have to see Emma beforehand because I need to know that she is competent to be able to sign it, right? Yeah. And I was like, that's what a power of attorney is.
Yeah, isn't that you're supposed to be foregoing that?
Yeah, because anyway. And he's like, and the trust fund that is being held by Emma's father's will is very strict, right? Like he's like, it's very precise about how things are supposed to be handled. And he was like, yeah, I know. That's why I need to get the power of attorney signed again so that I can take care of everything. Yeah. And he's like, okay, well, I will try to pull it up. I'll do anything for Emma. She's like a daughter to me. Her parents were my very first clients. Like, I care for her more than anybody else probably does, kind of a thing. And the husband's like, right?
More than me.
Which, I mean, he ain't wrong. So... Yeah. Good attorney.
Good to know.
Good to know. Yeah, because I'm like, normally there's like the scummy attorneys and stuff. But like this guy, I was like, yeah, Jonathan. Like, oh, yeah. Yep, so he's like, well, we need to schedule a time so that we can, talk about the power of attorney and stuff, blah, blah, blah. Well, we get back to the house and we see Emma asleep on her bed now. And I'm like, oh, the life of a housewife.
Yeah, it is stressful.
So
she's in recovery.
Yeah,
okay?
She is in recovery. And I normally, if it was like a stay-at-home mom, I'd be like, you nap all you want, hun. Like but she's just a stay-at-home wife. They don't have kids. She just paints.
She's just home.
She just is home.
Yeah.
Yep. And anyway, but she's in recovery. So Brad is standing there just staring at her sleeping, okay? And he doesn't, hi honey, time to wake up. Like, hey, you okay? Why you sleep already kind of a thing. Because it's only maybe 6 or 7, maybe 8, but no, what he says is, how was your day? Very loudly at a sleeping person.
That's nice.
Yeah, he does shit like that.
I didn't think he was a dick before.
Right? And I was like, really, dude? So she's just kind of like, oh my gosh, no, I just laid down. Oh, no,
Yeah.
He says, I'll make dinner for us. And she goes, okay, veggies on my half. And I was like, okay, right?
Okay.
What? He goes downstairs and calls a pizza guy. He calls a pizza place. And I was like...
That's you making
dinner. Which is fine. If you were just like, should we do pizza? Easy? Yeah. Do it, kind of a thing. But he's straight up
I wonder if that was, supposed to be a joke. Where he was like, I'll make dinner. And she's like, I know what that means.
Yeah.
You're getting a pizza.
Maybe. But I was just like...
Maybe it just didn't land quite right.
It really is. Because she was just like, veggies on my half, okay? Just... Anyway, so he's down there on the phone calling the pizza guy and making an order. And Emma is sitting there and she keeps hearing giggling and voices and stuff. And she's like, no, it can't be. And I'm like, no, it can't be what? Yeah. That you're going crazy? Yeah. Because you are. You've known this for a while now, right?
Explain.
Please, yeah. But then she just, gets really upset about it and is, trying to block it out, but she can't. She can still hear the giggling, so she just screams. And the husband drops his phone and runs upstairs to go see if she's okay. Well, the pizza guy hears the screams and is like, dude, hello, are you okay? Hello? But then, we don't hear anything else about that for a second. So that he goes running upstairs and he's like, Emma, what is it? And she's like, make her go away. Tell her to go away. Tell her I don't need her. And he's trying to hug her and he's like, it's okay. Calm down. You're fine. No one's here but us. And she's like, I don't need her. Make her go away.
Oh boy.
Then we hear a knock on the door, and it's the police, right?
Good.
So the pizza guy called the police because he heard someone screaming. And then,
rightfully so.
Rightfully so. So, he tells her right before the police show up, he's like, I'm going to get you a sleeping pill. And she's like, I don't want any more pills. And he's like, Emma, you need to be taking your medication. And she was like, no more pills. They're not even working. He's like, because you're not taking them. Yeah. And she's like... So the cop comes in and he's like, well, I need to see your wife, because we think this could possibly be a domestic. And he's like, well, sure. He's like, my wife is having some psychotic episodes though. And this is just kind of one of hers. And he was like, are you a doctor? And he's like, yeah, I'm Dr. Tanner.
Actually,
and he was like, oh, okay, well, officer so-and-so. And he's like, okay, come on in. So he takes him upstairs and goes over to Emma, who's still sitting on the bed, sobbing. And so he's like, hey, Emma, it's okay. And she just throws herself on him and is sobbing. And so the cop's like, oh, okay. So that's what's actually happening here. I'm good. He's not beating her, So he goes to leave and he's like, I'm so sorry. This must be so horrible for you. And the husband plays it off so good. He's just like, it's worse for her, and you're like, oh,
if I didn't know any better.
Oh, right. But because we still think that he was cheating on her with his secretary and everything, So we're like, no, you're a scumbag, right?
Well, spoilers.
What? So the cop was like, does she see dead people? And he goes, I don't know. I don't see what she sees, kind of a thing. And he goes, oh, well, I had a guy once who went crazy because he was seeing dead people. And he's like, and Brad goes, okay, well, you drive safe.
All right, well, good night, sir. Thank you for your input.
The cop just yeah, and leaves. And I was like, what is this conversation?
That's really weird. I had a guy see dead people and he went crazy. All right, good night.
Good night.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he kind of looked like he had a little bit of kind of idea, right? Let's see. So the next day, Emma wakes up as the husband's getting ready for work, and she's like, I'm so sorry for freaking out. He's like, hey, it's okay. We'll get through this together. He's like, you just need to take your medication. It will help, And she's like, I just don't want to take it. And he's like, I get that. I know, honey, but you will feel better if you take it like you're supposed to. And she's like, okay. And he goes, okay. And don't forget, I made the reservation for 7. And she was like, all right, okay, I'll be there, you know? And so he leaves. And she gets up and starts getting ready for the day, and she keeps hearing the giggling and stuff. And so she hops in the shower just like, okay, I'll just, you know,
wash it off.
Wash it off. And she thinks she sees someone walk past the shower, and she's kind of like, what was that? You know? Yeah. And then it starts doing more flashes again, you know, of montage-y kind of things. She's getting ready for the day, and Brad is out again with his secretary, and they're walking into a very fancy jewelry store, right? And find this gorgeous necklace. It's gorgeous. And like, it's not one that I would wear, but I was like, damn, that's a pretty necklace, right? Yeah. There's a bunch of little jewels hanging down, just like silver. Is gorgeous, right? And so he puts it on the secretary and stuff, and she's just like, yes, I'm so pretty, and like, beautiful. It's so beautiful. And you're like, you scumbag, you bitch. You bitch. Like, you know he's married too. Fuck you. Fuck all of you, right? So they obviously buy it, and then it shows Emma back at home. It shows the secretary wearing the necklace, and then it fades to Emma wearing just a very simple strand of pearls, right? Which are so elegant, but wearing a black dress, and she thinks she sees a like full-grown adult blonde woman standing in the reflection of her mirror, but she's like, okay, close your eyes, just like, she's not there. Opens her eyes again, and it's Brad in the reflection now, and he's just like, hey, you almost ready? And she was like, oh, I think I'm gonna wear the red dress instead. And he goes, okay, maybe put your hair up too. And she was like, kind of a what face? And he goes, you just have such a beautiful face, and I want to be able to see it.
Okay.
So she's like, okay. So she does put her hair up, and she changes into a red dress. And she goes out to dinner, and they, you know, do the little toast, clink glasses. And he was like, to the birthday girl. And you're like, oh, it's her birthday. You were hanging out with another woman.
With the secretary and buying her jewelry on her birthday.
On her birthday. Right? Great. So they're talking for a second. And he's like, I'd really like to be able to do this more often, you know, get you out of the house and everything. And she's like, I just need time, Brad. I don't know if I can yet. And he's like, okay, well, we'll work on it, you know?
Yeah.
And so she like looks over, and she sees that woman again standing off in kind of, you know, on the other side of the restaurant, and freaks out and drops her wine glass and gets wine all over the place, and then looks up and she's gone. And he's like, what? Did you see someone you thought you knew? And I was like, that is the weirdest, like, weirdest way to word that. But
like, did you see someone?
Yeah. And she was like, can we just go home? I just want to go home. And he's like, okay, we'll go home, you know? So he's like, let me go get the check, and stands up to go, and then like pulls out his phone and calls somebody. And he's like, hey, we're done here. We're coming home early. And I was like, okay, who are you talking to?
Are you setting up a surprise party?
And so, so they get home and stuff. And yes, they get home to a dark house, come inside, and boom, it's a surprise party. And everyone but Emma's having fun. Of course.
She wanted to go home and not deal with people.
Yeah. But like, they got home, they were at the door, and she was like, hey, let me make it up to you.
Oh, no.
And he was like, well, let's just get inside first, because their doors are full glass with just like decorative metal covering it and stuff. And so you can very much be like, they'd be doing something on the porch kind of a thing, you know. You could see that. And he was like, let's just open the door. So yeah, it was a surprise party. Hooray! But Emma's kind of wandering around, and she walks past this one guy who they make like a point to like stare at for half a second. Yeah. And I was like, who is that?
Is this important?
She looks at him, kind of like smiles and waves. You find out later he's her psychiatrist.
Oh.
But I was like, they didn't introduce him at any other time. Like, it was,
hey, Dr. So-and-so.
Yeah, nothing. Like they just like smiled at each other and stuff. But they're like, clearly that her psychiatrist and her husband are friends, because they're both
in the field.
In the field, yeah. So she's kind of wandering around listening, and she we kind of pan over to Brad, and he's talking to some random guy who's like, I hear she's losing it, man. She's just locked inside all day, right? All the time. Like, if I were you, I'd maybe be getting on one of my other patients and stuff. I should have been a doctor. And Brad was like, you should have finished high school. And then like walks away. And so you're like, okay. He sees his secretary, and so he goes up to her, and you're like,
why was she invited?
Why? Yeah. And he goes, you did such a great job. Thank you for all the help. I don't think I could have done it without you. And you were like, oh, they were planning the party together.
So he's not a jerk, maybe, for this instant?
Maybe. And so, so she's like, oh, well, you know, it was my pleasure, blah, blah, blah. But she's like really close to him talking. She's also like fucking gigantic. She is so tall. Like, she was, like, looking down at him almost, kind of a thing. Like,
wow.
Yeah. And so then Emma goes up to him, and she's just, like, touching his shoulder, like, hi, honey. Hi. Yeah, like, all over him and stuff. And she was like, oh, were you in on the surprise, too? And she was like, yeah. And reaches over, grabbing his, like, jacket collar and starts, like, rubbing it between her fingers and stuff. She's like, you've got yourself such a great guy. Yeah. So Emma starts, like, rubbing her hand further on his chest, like, yes, I do.
Get off, get off.
And so she's just kind of like, and dismisses herself and walks away, right? And he was like, Emma. And she's like, what, could she have been any more obvious? He's like, Emma, she's my secretary. And she's like, well, right? And your secretary, she was all over you. And he was like, you should be thanking her. She helped throw this. And I was like, you threw your wife who doesn't want to talk to people a party.
Yeah.
Inviting everybody you know. Like.
And your secretary.
Right? The whole time, though, I'm like, but where's the necklace, dude? Where's the necklace?
Right.
Like, what? Where's that, right? So Emma, of course, is annoyed and goes into the kitchen, okay? And is just like, oh, gosh, that freaking secretary, Brad being, right? But then she keeps hearing giggling and stuff and just decides that she's being a little too, like, worked up. And so she decides to take a pill, right? So she pops some of her medication, drinks a glass of wine.
That's what we do with medication. Don't do that with medication.
Please don't do that. Anyway, suddenly Lily is standing behind her in the black dress she was wearing before and the pearls, right?
Okay.
And just kind of like does this weird like wave at her. And Emma screams and freaks out because holy shit, you're actually like right in front of me kind of a thing. Yeah. And I don't know how she manages to do it. Because it looked like she dropped her glass, but it also looked like she just, like, took it and was like, bam! Like, smacked her hand with the glass on the counter. And so she breaks the glass and cuts her hand. And everyone comes running in because, oh my gosh, what just happened, you know? And she's freaking out like, oh my gosh, Brad, tell her to go away. And he's running over like, oh my gosh, your hand, are you okay? It's okay, no one's here. It's just us. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like,
all of these people.
Us and all these people, right? But he's like cradling into her and she is like cowering into him. Okay, so I was annoyed about this in a second, but like she's clinging to him like, oh Brad, oh no. And he's like, hey, it's okay. And he weirdly does this, like puts his chin on top of her head thing, like, but I don't know why he did it like that, because like
good level
it's
for
no
him,
like he's definitely like
stretching for
it was like, why are you doing that, dude?
I love the things you notice.
Yeah, I was just like, what am I doing? Like, she's almost as tall as you, like. Anyway, so he's like, it's gonna be okay. And then you look over and you see his secretary kind of being like, are you okay? And he's like, we're okay to everybody. And her psychiatrist is still kind of standing there and he's like, thanks, Michael, it's okay, we got this. And he's like, okay, and kind of walks away. But we still, again, don't know who he is. We don't know he's her psychiatrist yet.
Michael.
Yep, we're like, okay, bye, Michael. Thanks, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Don't worry about it, Michael, right? Later on after the party, they're in their bedroom, and Emma is like, I can't believe you treated me like a child in front of all those people. I'm like, you were the one sobbing into him.
He
was
just comforting you.
He was comforting you. Like, and you were... So they're arguing for a minute back and forth, and she's like, well, blah, 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 this. And he's like, that's not the problem. She's like, what is the problem then, Brad? And he's like, it's that you're too, oh, you're not well enough to cope with this. And then storms out, right? And she's like, right? And they also, this, I have to say this really quick because she's like clinging to their bedpost. They've got one of those 4-poster beds, okay? Yeah. But it's not a canopy bed. It's just a very tall,
headboard.
4 posters. No, not even headboard. It's just these just 4 tall posts. Really tall posts that spiral like a unicorn horn. And I was like, okay, this is the ugliest bed I've ever seen in my life. Like, choices were made, and they're really, really tall. Like, really tall. Like, if I were to stand on the bed, you'd need 2 of me. Wow. Like, they were so fucking tall, right?
I want ceilings that can fit that bed in.
Right?
That sounds great.
But yeah, so she's just like leaning against it. And then she glances over, and there's Lily standing there and going, men, they're impossible. And I was like, oh, this is a lifetime.
Men, am I right?
Yeah. So Emma's like, oh, you're not there, you know? And it tries to look away, but then she looks back and Lily's still standing there. And is like, oh my gosh, okay. And she's like, do you remember me? I was Lily when you were... And she's like, Daisy. And she's like, yeah, remember we used to run and play together and we, you know, like do all this stuff. And she'd be like, and dance. And she's like, yeah, remember? Then kind of like tries to do the little pinky thing, right? Okay. And so then Emma reaches over, they do the little pinky thing. And she's like, yeah, we were best friends, remember? And she's like, yeah, I remember, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, what's going on? And,
why was she afraid of you at first?
Right, well, because she doesn't want to be having, she knows she's having psychotic visions, but she's like, but you're not real, though. And she's like, I'm as real as you want me to be. And then she's like, but I can't, and just, you can't be real, and I don't need you, as she's like looking away, and then she looks back, and Lily's no longer there, Brad's sitting on the bed, and he's just like, listen, I'm so sorry, that was completely uncalled for. I shouldn't have gotten angry at you like that, you know?
True.
And she's like, oh, I'm sorry too. Like, I was overreacting about a few things. And she's like, I know it's so hard. And he's like, it's okay. We're going to get through this together, you know? And so for half a second, you're like, okay, he's not as bad as the guy as you think he is. He just wants his wife to get better, right? And
we'll see.
Right? Oh yeah, she's like, I know how hard it is for you. And he's like, okay, well, you get some sleep, and like puts her to bed and stuff, right? And then next day we see Emma sitting with her psychologist, the guy from the party. Michael. And I was like, who is that guy? Who is he? And then it wasn't until like I watched it the second time that I was like, oh fuck, he was the dude at the party. Like, because she doesn't call him Michael until almost toward, like, Brad calls him Michael towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And so I did not put two and two together because they were so far apart. And he's got a very generic, handsome movie face guy. Exactly. Like, you know, he's no one who just stands. He's handsome, but yeah, dime a dozen. When in Hollywood. Oh, so he's asking her about her dreams and her visions, and he's like, when did they first starting appear? Like, when you were a child, when would they appear? And she goes, well, whenever my dad would be yelling or beating my mom. Yep. And he was like, okay. And what about after when your dad killed your mom and then killed himself?
Jesus.
And she was like, I was like, whoa.
Big jump.
Drop that on the audience, you know? Because they had alluded to a couple of times in the movie that her parents had died, obviously, because she's getting the trust from her parents. His will. Yeah, his will. And you're like, okay, so he died, you know.
At least he had his shit in order before he did all of that. So, right? You know, that's what's important.
Yeah, and, like, they never say how old she was when he killed their mom or whatever, but, like, I don't know. And she was just kind of like, yeah, too bad he didn't kill himself first, kind of a thing, right? And, I mean, in her defense, he was just a massive dick. Like, just...
Yeah, abusers... Yeah.
Yeah. So he says that, he's like, hey, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you, Emma. Like... I need to know, are you still seeing visions now? Mm-hmm. And she's obviously seems really reluctant at first. And she's like, yeah, sometimes. And he's like, okay, then I think maybe we should change up your medication a little bit. Get you maybe trying this instead. Like, because the stuff you're on right now, you're not supposed to be seeing anything.
It's not working because you're not taking it all the time.
But she's not telling him that. She's like, yeah, I'm taking it. Like, no, you're not. Anyway, so he's like, okay, but when it comes to, like, you know, these visions of yours... Is it always the same little girl? And she's like, always. And I'm like, but she's not a little girl anymore in these visions that you're having. Like,
I mean, it is the same person, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But, like, I don't know. And then at the same time, you're kind of like, well, I guess as a crazy adult, you'd want to have adult friends, not a child friend, you know? So, she's sitting by the pool later, and Lily's sitting next to her, and it's just like, are you embarrassed of me? She's like, it's not like I'm ugly or scary. I mean, if I had blood coming down of my eyes, I'd understand, you know, but, like, I'm different, you know, I'm normal.
It makes me think of Don't Look Under the Bed. Did you ever watch that show? Oh my god. I rewatched it, like, not that long ago.
It's on Disney Plus, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
That was fucked up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. But she's like, yeah, that's the great thing about being an imaginary friend. I can be anything you want me to be, you know? And I was like, I would, like, what would you do if she was like, oh, man, I want you to grow wings and fly away and, like, come back with, what? Like, but as she's, like, they're talking to each other, Brad comes out asking if she wants anything special for dinner and if she's doing okay. And she's just kind of like, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And, like, kind of keeps glancing at the chair and stuff. And he's like, is somebody else here right now kind of thing? And she was like, what? No.
Everything's fine. I'm fine.
Right? And he's like, Emma, this is, like, the worst it's ever been, right? Like, you know? And she's like, no, it's fine. It'll go away. And Lily goes, it? So I'm an it now? And, like, gets up and is like, ugh, kind of an annoyed, like, don't call me it. And it's like, by the way, I'm loving this dress, and then walks away. And Emma goes, bitch. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, what are you talking about, Emma? Take your medication. And then he's like, well, maybe we should have you go to the hospital for a little bit if this keeps getting worse. And she's like, you just want to have me committed, and storms away and goes off to paint, right?
Okay.
And let's see, so she's in her art studio and she's painting away, and Lily walks in and is just kind of like, wow, you're actually like a really good artist. And she's like, yeah, thanks. You know,
what a compliment.
What a compliment. And she goes, no, really, where do you get your ideas from? And she's like, in my head, everyone thinks I'm nuts. And she's like, are you? And she's like, am I what? She's like, are you nuts? And Emma just starts laughing because she's like, my imaginary friend wants to know if I'm nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's a little funny,
also,
right?
Can we just note that she asked where she gets her ideas from, and she said in her head?
Yeah.
As opposed to, like all thoughts are in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that you can have outside inspiration, I guess, but
yeah.
like, the way they worded that sounds weird.
But I'm just like, I'm just still looking at her studio. They barely show any sort of paintings. They have the one painting she's working on covered up mostly because you're not supposed to see what it is yet, right? Like that's the one she's working on. But like all these other paintings, I'm like, none of them match. None of them are like anything like each other at all, which...
My favorite is in movies when they show them, like you're supposed to watch them paint, and they're only like painting over something that has already been painted before, and you're just like, we're not dumb.
Yep,
how hard is it to like draw your own line for a movie?
Yeah, no, they do shit like that all the time, and I'm like, okay. Or like when we watched Emily, when they were drawing on the walls, and he was just kind of like using a dry paintbrush on the wall and stuff, and I was like, why did they not just let actual children like scribble on the wall, like
or even just whoever.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it. Like,
yeah. I wonder if it's like the takes. Maybe. Like you do so many takes that it would be hard to like keep consistency.
I don't know, man. So they're at dinner later, and Brad comes in and is like, well, you seem to be in a better mood. And he's like, the medication must be working. She's like, it's not the medication. I can do this by myself. And he was like, Emma, no, you need to take your medication and stuff. And she's like, no, and he's like, okay, well, whatever. So they keep like flashing to the next day really quick and stuff. Oh, so he's at his office again, looking through some paperwork, and the secretary comes over and kind of starts flirting with him again and stuff when the phone rings, and it's Emma's attorney, and he's like, okay, listen, let's schedule it for tonight. And it shows Emma back at home. She's swimming in the pool with Lily. They're both swimming together and stuff, and just kind of randomly getting on the subject. I guess not randomly. Emma's very much just like, my mom wouldn't scream because she was like worried it would frighten me. And I was like, okay. Oh, I mean, I know Lily's your best friend and supposed to like know all your most intimate secrets, but you're just like, truth bomb, like get in there, right? Lily asks like, so did your mom end up leaving him? And she was like, in a way, he killed her. And I'm like,
not how that works.
Right? Jeez. And Lily's like, that just must have been so hard for you. I'm so sorry. And they just like kind of comfort each other and hold hands and stuff. And Emma goes,
why she didn't show up then.
Right?
Okay.
I don't know. But Emma like takes her hand and is like, you feel just like I remember you feeling, kind of a thing. And you're like, okay.
That's a weird thing to say.
That's a weird thing to say, right? And anyway, they swim away. And then she wakes up later to Brad ask, like, she's asleep. And Brad is like, you doing okay?
So he's really good at being considerate.
Yeah, just waking shit up like that. Like, so, and she's like, I wish you'd stop asking me that. I'm your wife, not your patient. And he's like, I'm just worried about you, Like, I want you to stop having these hallucinations. I want you to go back to who you are, Yeah. And she's like, okay, I get it. You're being sweet and stuff, right? And so she starts kissing him, and he kind of like is a little hesitant about it. And she's like, shut up and take it while you can. And he's like, okay. So jumps in on that, right? And that gets down to business. The next morning, he leaves her a note. Like, it's another day already kind of a thing, right? He leaves her pills on the counter with a note, just like, don't forget to take your medication, and she dumps them down the sink.
Good.
Yep. And so she grabs her purse and gets ready to leave the house, right? And you're like, oh, okay. And so she pauses at the door, though, and looks over, and Lily's standing there and is like, you can do this. And she's like, I don't know. Brad's always been worried about, like, me embarrassing him if I were to have a freak out in public. And she's like, well, it's a good thing Brad's not here, huh?
Yeah, that's the worst excuse I've ever heard.
Exactly. But at the same time, though, I'm like, but what if she does have a freak out in public?
And no one's there.
And no one's there that she knows to comfort her? Like,
yeah.
But she's like, I want to be able to do this, though. And she goes, yeah, well, why don't you just prove him wrong? And she's like, yeah, I would prove him wrong. And she's like, yeah, are you going to come with me, though? And Lily's like, no, you can do this by yourself. You got this. And she's like, right, I got this. And leaves and drives all the way to downtown, wherever this downtown is, right? So she parks and suddenly has a flashback to one time when she was sitting in the car as a child and her dad was like screaming at her mom. And for like half a second, I thought, was this what killed her parents kind of a thing? Because it was like the perfect like suddenly get hit by a car scene. Yeah. And then I was like, oh no, he killed her, right? Like he killed her and then killed himself. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Ugh, kind of a thing. Anyway, so she just kind of like turns around and is like more determined to do this by herself. And I was like, I don't understand why that was the scene that made her like more determined to do this by herself.
Yeah, that's
like,
weird.
It's weird. Yeah. So she gets out of her car and she goes into, I guess, what was one of her favorite shops that she used to shop at, right? Which is very high class, which is funny because she buys a t-shirt. Or not a t-shirt. She buys like just a shirt. Very 2010 cuffed button shirt, you know. Anyway, so she walks in and is really nervous, just kind of looking around, and one of the workers walks up to her and she was like, Miss Turner? And it had to have been like years at this point that she locked herself away, right? And I think it was years. I mean, I guess it could have only been a few months, but like they made it seem like she was gone a long time. And she was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in quite a while. She's like, yeah, I was away, but I'm back now. And she's like, oh, fantastic, it's so good to see you. And so Emma's kind of like relaxing a little bit because she's like someone who like genuinely wants to see me. And the worker goes like, so I see you're still a size 2. Come with me, I'll get you. And I was like, huh? What? You're a size 2? Anyway, so she's like, yeah, come with me. I just got some new things that I think you'd really like. And like takes her off, right? Then it shows Emma back at home and she's looking at herself in the mirror and Lily's sitting on the bed. And Emma has a new haircut. She's got her nails done. And she's wearing her new shirt and stuff. She's like, I just wanted to cut it for so long. You know, it's like barely maybe like 4 inches, you know, but like it's cut. That's the point. And she's like, gosh, I feel so much better now and stuff. And Lily's like, you look great. You look like you're being really happy, you know? Mm-hmm. And she's like, why didn't you ever go out before? Like, why weren't you doing this? And she was like, well, Brad just didn't think it was a good idea. She's like, and you're just going to keep listening to him? And she was like, well, he always knew it was best. So like, why did I question him, you know?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, maybe he's not always right. Maybe he's actually wrong. And she's like, yeah, maybe he is actually wrong. And she's like, well, you know, maybe your medication's helping you too. And she goes, no, I'm not taking my medication. It's you, Lily. You're what's giving me the strength to go back out there and stuff, right? Oh, and I was like, this is exactly what the medication is for. And so Lily just kind of gives her this look and is like, do you really think you can be best friends with someone who only exists in your head? And she's like, I have been my whole life. And then they hug. And you're like, why is this cute, but not? Like, this is weird. But then Lily starts looking, like, regretful about something, right? And you're like, okay, right? And then they show Lily and Emma down in the kitchen, and Emma's cooking. She's cutting up vegetables and stuff, right? And Brad comes home, and he was like, wow, hey, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just cooking, you know? And he's like, oh, okay, what were you doing today? And she's like, I went into town. It was so much fun. He's like, we went into town with your special friend? And she's like, can you not word it like that, please? Like, yeah. and no, I was by myself, you know? And he was like, okay, right. And Lily's back there just being like, he should compliment your hair and your nails. Like, he should be complimenting you right now. You look great, you know? And he's like, okay, because like, are we alone right now? And she's like, yeah, we're fine, you know? And he was, and he's just going off about your hallucinations and medication. And the whole time I was just like, fucking shut up, dude. We get it, you know? But he was just going on and on and on and on. But Lily's still sitting there being like, man, he is kind of a pill pusher, isn't he? And stuff. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yes, what? And she's like, yes, I've been taking my medication today. Okay. And he goes, okay, well, here's another one.
Yeah.
And then hands her a glass of wine, and Lily's like, ooh, pills with alcohol. He's a good doctor, you know?
Yep.
And, like, Emma's just kind of like, I know, right? Like, but takes it anyway, because he's standing right there, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, so listen, I was talking to Michael, and she was like, why? And he was like, well, because, you know, he's a psychiatrist, and he's my friend. And he thinks that the new medication that we're going to put you on, you should be monitored for a little while you're on it.
I don't think that's legal.
Yeah. Well, so he wants to have her committed, but she has to agree to go to the hospital.
I mean, I don't think the therapist is supposed to be telling him that.
No.
Even though he's the husband, there's still client confidentiality.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And he's like, well, but he's already told me that that's what he wants to do for you. And he's like, it's not my decision. It was his decision. Right. And I was like, uh-huh.
We all know.
So she's like, well, you just like want to get rid of me, don't you? And he was like, no, I don't. I just want you to be better and stuff. Right. And she's like, okay, whatever. And he's like, oh, and Jonathan, the attorney, is coming by later to sign your new power of attorney. And she's like, I just don't see why you're in such a rush to get this done. He's like, honey, I'm just trying to get our bills paid. And she's like, okay, fine, you know. So the attorney shows up, and he's sitting there like, oh, Emma, look at you. You look so good. And she's like, thanks, Jonathan. You know, and you're like, and he's like in his 60s, and you're just like, Jonathan.
Dad figure, yeah.
Oh, Jonathan, you know. They're talking about signing it and stuff. And she goes, oh, by the way, remind me, what would happen if he and I were to get a divorce? And the attorney, I've watched this scene like 6 times. I've had to rewind it so many times trying to figure out what is going on. I really don't understand how someone's will can dictate so much of this.
Okay.
Because it's not the dad's money. It's the mom's money. It's her money. But because they were married, I guess, it's his money now. And his will decided that... And the other thing that confuses the hell out of me is that they need a power of attorney for someone else to be able to take money out of the account to put it into her account. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why do you need that?
Yeah.
Okay? But it's like dictated in the will that it has to be there for it. Right?
Weird.
So it's like that her husband is supposed to have power. And I think it's probably because her dad was crazy and is just like, wow, you know. But she was like, so what happens if we get divorced? And Brad's like, what would you say that? Kind of a look, right? And he's like, well, your father's will was very strict about it. If you two were to get divorced, or if you were to stay together, and you would continue to get like so many payments and live the rest of your lives in comfort and luxury. And
how much money is this?
I have no idea. They didn't even talk about it, right? Here's the thing, though. If somebody gave me $1 million, I could live the rest of my life perfectly fine. Absolutely comfortably. I would never, like... I'm not a splurger. No. I think we'd, like, go to Disneyland more often, though. Yeah. That's about it.
I would buy more shit on Amazon without having to think about it. Yep. But I'm not going to buy, like, 1 million cars or...
No, like... I would buy a couple of nice cars and have them upkept, you know, like, pay off my house. Like, that's, you know, and so I'm just like, what do all of these other people just need all this money for? Yeah. Like, I don't know. But that's, I guess, coming from a middle-class family like us. Anyway, so, like, it was fine. Anyway, but he's, like, going on about how, they live in luxury. However, if they were to get divorced, they would get one lump sum payment, and that's it. They'd be cut off from the rest of the fund. And I'm like, where would the rest of the money go?
Yeah, why would that change?
Why would that change?
Okay.
Like, I have no idea. And the attorney was like, well, your father was a stickler for the sanctity of marriage. And I was like, apparently not! Yeah. Because, you know, it's not... beat his wife. You're not supposed to beat your wife, you know, if we want to talk about biblical stuff here. It's very much not.
That's frowned upon in most societies.
Yep. Like, the Bible even at one point says, like, you're supposed to, like, cling to your spouse more than you should, like, love your children, kind of a thing. Yeah. Like, if your children were a problem, you cut them off and you continue to stay with your spouse, kind of a thing.
I can have more children.
Right? And I was like, okay. So, but I was, like, listening to this, like, 4 or 5 times, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, I'm not a law student and stuff, so, like, maybe somebody else can explain it to me. Or maybe it was just the loophole of his will or some shit. But I was like, that doesn't seem right. Like, that just... Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, he was like, yeah, well, your father was a stickler for the sanctity of marriage. And Brad was like, well, we are too, right, honey? And she's like, yeah. And goes to sign the power of attorney. And he goes, wait, you signed your wrong name. And I'm like... what? Like, they don't show what she signs, right? She just signs the wrong name, I guess. And the attorney goes, oh, that's her second name. I know it gets confused. He's like, that's the name she needs to use for the power of attorney. He's like, I know it gets confusing when you have two names. And I was like, do you mean a
middle
maiden name? A middle name?
Oh.
A maiden name? Like, what are we talking about here? They didn't say what the name was.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, that's not the right name. And he was like, oh, okay. Okay. Like,
what? Why is that important?
I don't know. Like, so, like, I guess later on maybe it is, but, like, they don't really talk about it a ton.
Okay.
And I'm just like, okay. But they didn't tell you what the other name was. They didn't, like, I don't get that part. Like,
You're like, it's not Emma Robinson, it's Emma Turner, you dumb.
Yeah.
Why are you signing your maiden name?
Yeah.
Or, you know.
No, nothing. Like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, like, that whole little scene, I was just like, am I fucking stupid? Am I dumb? What is happening here? Like, did I have a brain aneurysm a couple of times? Like.
You did have a brain aneurysm.
Yeah. Let's see here. Anyway, so then it shows her at her doctor's again the next day, and I clearly was not paying attention to while I was typing because it says Saskatoon, and instead of he asks again if she still has
Saskatoon.
If she still has visions and stuff. And she was like, I mean, once in a while, you know, even though, like, Lily's like constantly there. Yeah. And he's like, and your husband mentioned to me that you've been experiencing some issues of self-harm. And she's like, what? No, I haven't. He goes, Emma, I was at the party when you cut your hand. And she was like, okay, but that wasn't. He's like, and he says that the other day he caught you lying on the bottom of the pool. And she was like, I was just sitting underwater. Like, what? Like, you know, and he goes, okay, well, I think it might be time for you to go spend some time at the hospital. And she was like, I just don't know about that. You know, like, frustrated. And he was like, I just want what's best for you, Emma. Yeah. And I was like, is he in on this too?
Right?
Is he in on it? You know, what's happening, right? But she's back home and she's trying to paint, but she's like a little frustrated and stuff and just thinking, keeps looking out the windows and stuff. And it shows Brad at the hospital with Michael and some other doctor, this older guy who I actually really liked because he definitely seemed like, no, we just want what's best for people, you know, like, I'm here to help, like, and he clearly doesn't seem like he's in on anything. He's just like, no, I've been told that there's a crazy woman who needs to come here, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this, you know? Yeah. And anyway, but they're talking so long about how she just needs to be at the hospital, and I was like, shut up, we get it.
We know.
Like, the only thing Brad ever talks about is take your medication, stop the hallucinations, go to the hospital. Like, that's all he talks about. So shut up, dude. Yeah. Anyway, but they're like, yeah, so we're going to get her set up to stay here and stuff. And he goes, okay, and she'll probably be here for quite a while. So they're telling Emma a couple of days, maybe, you know, maybe a week. Yeah. And they're planning on long term, yeah. Emma is, like, painting away, and she just kind of is like, has this okay look on her face, right? Like, this is what I need to do. Determined look, right? And now Brad is back at the bank, and he's trying to get some funds transferred over now that everything is all figured out and stuff. And he was like, oh, so I can do a couple of things for you, but we can't do everything that we used to be able to. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, it looks like the new power of attorney you signed doesn't give you full access to the account anymore. Okay. And he was like, what? I didn't realize it was any different. He's like, yeah, it's not like a full power of attorney or something. So he's like, you can still transfer funds, but I can't tell you how much is in there, and I can't, like, you know. And he's like, what the heck? What's going on, you know? Anyway, so he's all, like, frustrated. Oh, and that her attorney had been in the day before transferring money out, making some transfers. And he was like, what? So he's all kind of pissed off about that. And it's like, what's going on, you know? But then they show him back at home, and he's sitting in his office staring out the window. And Emma is sitting next to the pool just reading. And then you see hands come up from behind and start rubbing his shoulders and stuff. And rubs his shoulders for way too long, honestly, of a shot. And I was like, get on with it. And it's Lily.
Okay.
Yep. And she's rubbing his shoulders. And he was like, oh, that feels really good. And she goes, yeah, I guess all your ex-patients like to keep in touch with you, don't they? Yep. And so he's just like, oh man, you know, I really just need to spend more time with you, blah, blah, blah. Like, some of the lines that they make Lily say doesn't make any sense to me. Where she's like, I guess some of your patients want to keep in touch with you. She's the only fucking one.
Yeah.
I don't know who all these other patients are.
Yeah.
You're like, what? I have no idea, right? Like, no fucking clue. And he's like, you're just so beautiful. And she's like, well, thanks, you know. And but then annoyed, she asks him, she's like, so did you enjoy it? And he's like, enjoy what? And she was like, sleeping with your wife. It's been like, what, 6 months since you guys have been together in bed at least? And he was like, hey, listen, it's just, you know. And she's like, well, I guess you just enjoy screwing both women in your life, don't you? Right? And you're like, okay, well, I mean, she is his wife, but you know,
why are we mad about this?
Right, we're mad about this, right?
That was my favorite on like old cheater shows.
Oh yeah.
When there's a guy who has a girlfriend and he's cheating on said girlfriend, and the girlfriend is like, you bitch.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does she do?
Yeah.
It's him.
It's him.
He's the bitch.
Right, like, and I if she knew, especially that he was helping cheat, I would be like, fuck both of you, right? But if she was like, I had no fucking clue,
half the time the cheater, or the cheatee
because why would he
doesn't know.
want the other one to know, right?
Yeah. Like, by the way, my wife back home. No.
You know, yeah, exactly. And you're like, no, that is exactly how you get fucking, I will not be ignored, Dan. Anyway, I can't remember what that one's called, but that's a line from it. It's what is her name? Cruella DeVille.
Emma. Oh,
yeah, in the other movie.
Oh, Glenn Close?
Glenn Close!
Oh.
Glenn Close.
Or is it Meryl Streep?
No, Glenn Close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get those two confused.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to remember what the fucking movie was. If any of you know,
leave a comment.
Leave a comment. I watched the movie. Zach and I watched it, but like it was...
Okay.
I should tell you that one, actually. Anyway, so he's like, hey, listen, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna be together soon. And pulls out that awesome, amazing necklace and puts it on her. And you're like, you motherfucker. So yeah. Yep. Yes. So I'm just like, fuck you, dude. Anyway, and he puts it on her and she's like, oh my gosh, you know, this is great. And he was like... starts kind of up on her, and she's like, no, not while Emma's home and not in her house, kind of a thing. And you're like, weird moment to start having girl code, but okay. Yeah. And he's like, well, then let's go to your place. And she's like, no. And he's like, okay, well, you know, she's going to be in the hospital here soon, and then you and I don't have to hide anymore, and we can just have all the access to her money that we need, kind of a thing, right?
What the fuck?
Right? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, you know? And she goes, I just don't want to see her hurt. And I'm like, what is this random girl code-ness coming up from you? Like,
either respect or don't.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I didn't say a line, that she was like, well, your plan for make your wife think she's crazy is going pretty well. So, like, she's in on it, obviously, you know, and...
I wondered if the medication was doing the opposite of what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, every time she thought she was talking to an imaginary person and the husband was like, who are you talking to? There was actually a human sitting there?
Yeah. Because they were in on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What the
hell?
hell?
So they were just, like, pretending, you know, he was just pretending that she wasn't there. And...
Okay.
And I mean, could you imagine him actually sitting in the kitchen? She's like, wow, alcohol with your pills. What a great doctor. And
why isn't he saying that you look nice?
Yeah, your hair, you look great and stuff. But I mean, at the same time, he's like fully understanding that her friend's supposed to be on her side, you know, because why wouldn't your imaginary... If your imaginary friend isn't on your side, that's a toxic imaginary friend, to get a new one.
Do something about that.
Ditch him at Foster's home and get a new one.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's just like, it's okay, we're gonna, you know, she's gonna be in the hospital soon and stuff. And Lily's like, I just don't want to destroy her, you know? And he's like, hey, what the fuck are you talking about right now? And she's like, whatever, you know? So she kind of like storms out of the room and goes off to the pool and sees Emma swimming now. And they're kind of chatting for a second. And Emma's like, I can't have you here anymore. Like, you have to leave, kind of thing, or they're going to send me away to the hospital. And she's like, but you don't want to go to the hospital, do you? They can't make you go. And she's like, you don't know Brad. And she's like, well, he can't make you do anything. And I'm not going anywhere. And she's like, I guess I'll just go with you to the hospital. She's like, no, I can't have you go with me. I need you to leave. Like, I have to be sane. You know, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, well, you're going to have to make me leave then, right? Okay. Then we see Brad going to the attorney's office later and is accusing him of stealing Emma's money. Or like the money from the trust fund. And he's like, how dare you, sir? You are overstepping your bounds and you don't know what you're talking about, whippersnapper. And he's like, you better watch yourself, kind of a thing. And you're like, but they said you are taking money out of the account. So like,
yeah.
But so what? But while they're like talking about that, Emma's painting again, I guess. And I don't know if this is the next day. I don't know if it's later that day. I have no fucking clue.
Okay.
But Emma's standing there painting, and as she's painting, she just kind of starts like like stabbing at the board, or not stabbing, I guess she's just painting angrily with
Jabbing.
like really thick red paint, right?
Good.
And very much has this like yes look on her face, like this is what I'm gonna do.
And some of these, and some of these.
And so then Brad is out and about after all that and is buying roses and earrings and wine, and he's just kind of driving through town and calling Lily on and leaving her. Well, yeah. Lily, in quotation marks, her name's actually Brittany, but we don't find out till like way later on.
Ew.
I know, right?
Sorry to any Brittany's out there.
But I'm like, they couldn't have come up with any other name.
Yeah, we have Brittany and Brad and Emma.
Yeah.
Like, did you just pull up the top 100 baby names
right.
and pick the first 3 you
Remember all those
at?
years ago when all the guys were named Jason and all the girls were named Brittany? Like, yeah.
It's a very popular name.
Yeah, so they're, he's going about his day and stuff, and then we see Emma in the garden later, and she's like digging ferociously, and she's like tearing up rose plants and stuff, like just digging them fully out of the ground and stuff, and throwing them off to the side. And so she's doing that while Brad's like leaving voicemails for for Brittany, and is like, hey, listen, I'm headed home now, but I'm gonna swing by your place later. Just let me know. We're gonna celebrate because she'll be going to the hospital tomorrow morning and stuff, right?
That fucking sucks.
Right? So he gets home, and Emma is sitting there. She's got this really nice, dinner spread set up for him and stuff. The candle's lit, and he walks in, and he's like, hi. What you doing? And she just holds up her glass and she goes, to freedom. And he's like,
what?
Okay, and sits down and is like, what's going on? And this was the longest fucking scene. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So effectively, Emma just starts talking about how she's like, I took what you said to heart, that I needed to have Lily leave, and so I made her leave. I got rid of her. And he's like, you what?
Oh.
And she's like, I got rid of her, Brad, for us. And he's like, what did you do? And she's like, well, I mean, this is silly to say, but I killed her. He's like, what? And she's like, well, because I thought, how do I make something in my head just disappear? I had to see it leave. I had to know that it was going to be gone. So I killed her. And he was like,
just imaginary, so it's fine.
So it's fine. And he's like, what? And starts like loosening his tie and is like, what are you? And she's like, what is your problem? What is your, like, what are you doing?
No.
And he's like, well, it's just not every day that your wife tells you that they killed someone.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's not real, Brad. She wasn't real. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to need you to tell me like exactly what. And she goes
How
off.
did you kill her? Where did you bury her?
Right.
What is going on?
But she goes off on this tangent for a moment about how, like, it was so weird how she did feel so real. Like, the way she smelled, the way she felt, and, like, the way she bled. And I just kind of, for a minute, like, just goes off on this other random tangent about how she's, like, it, like, reminded me of, like, when my dad killed my mom. And, like, when I found him there, and it made me feel like I had been the one that killed him, and blah, blah, blah. Like, that went on for, like, so
Okay.
Like, so fucking long. And so he's like, okay, well, I need you to tell me exactly what you did. And she was like, well, I was talking to her by the pool, and I told her she needed to leave, and she said she wasn't going to. And she, like, stupidly followed me into the house. And so I lured her into the shower, and I was like, what? What? How?
Maybe play that back for me, please.
You skipped a few steps, right? And she's like, so then I stabbed her. They're like, I did it up there. So he like flings himself out of the chair and goes sprinting upstairs into the bathroom and sees that there's no blood in the shower. There's nothing. There's no body or anything. So he goes, oh my gosh, she is crazy, right? So then he goes back downstairs, and she's now sitting in the living room just like, what? Like drinking wine.
What'd you find?
Yeah, like, what are you doing and stuff? And he was like, okay, and so she starts like trying to get all up on him and stuff, right? And
this
he's
is
like,
the time for that.
Yeah, and
yes.
she's like, because I did it for us, Brad. We're gonna be so happy now. Like, she's gone forever. And he's like, right, okay, yeah. And she was like, yeah. So why did you go upstairs then? Because obviously she thinks that she killed an imaginary person.
So he wouldn't have anything to find anyway.
Yeah. And he goes, well, I just wanted to see the crime scene, trying to play it off. And she goes, well, I didn't just kill her there, silly. I finished her off in the cellar. And I was like, your size 2 ass hauled her
a person
into the cellar
from upstairs.
From
right?
upstairs, yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. And the cellar stairs, because they show him going down the stairs, right, into the cellar. Like, did you, like, put her on the top step and kick her? Because, like, that's the only way you're getting her ass down there. Yeah. And not saying that the other that Brittany is a big lady. She's not by any means. But, like, there's no fucking way.
Gretchen Wieners is a small woman.
Yeah, there's no fucking way, man. Like, stick with your toaster strudels. Anyway, Toaster strudels? Yeah, because Gretchen Wieners is the heir to the toaster strudel. Her dad invented the toaster strudel.
Right, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't seen Mean Girls in a long time. I'm sorry.
Catch up on that. Anyway, sorry. So he's like throws himself off the couch and runs down into the cellar now, right? And she's just like,
Brad,
what is he doing? Yeah. So he runs down into the cellar, and what does he find but blood and a bloody towel and the gorgeous ass necklace laying down there.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And he's like, oh my gosh, right? And like freaks out. And goes running upstairs and is like very much out of breath. And he was like, what did you do? And she was like, come to bed. So, because she's like now laying in bed. And he's like, what did you do? Did you actually hurt somebody? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I saw the blood. And she was like, wait, you saw blood? I just didn't think you could see it too, kind of a thing. And he was like, what did you do with the body? And she was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the body, what did you do with her body? She's like, I buried it, Brad. What are you talking about? And he's like,
of course.
You know, and he's like, show me right now. And like yanks her out of the bed and makes her go downstairs. And so she's out there with one of those flashlights that like does nothing because it's a film set. Yeah. And obviously they're just putting like a dark tinge over it because it's not nighttime. Yeah. And he leads him over into a part of the garden that she had been digging up earlier that day. And so he like grabs the flashlight from her and she was like, it's cold. I'm going back to bed. And like goes upstairs, right? Like, you're being irrational right now. Like, right? And so he starts like, he sees that there are plants dug up and it looks like something had been buried. So he starts digging through there and he finds the blouse that Brittany had been wearing that day. And he was like, oh, right? Freaks out. And goes back inside and I guess decides to take a couple of sleeping pills because he tried to call Brittany again and left her a voicemail because she, again, didn't answer, you know?
Why would he call the police?
Because he does, if his wife gets arrested, then it, like, ruins her going into the hospital and him getting all her money.
Okay.
Yep. I guess. I'm like, if she was in jail, you'd still have all of her money, you'd think.
I would think, yeah.
You would think. I don't know. But he takes a few sleeping pills and then wakes up the next day to the hospital calling and they're like, where's Emma?
You coming in?
You coming in? And he's like, no, she's not ready. She's not ready. She needs a little bit more time. And they're like, well, everything's ready for her. What the fuck? Get here, dude, you know? And he's like, oh, okay, oh my gosh, you know? So he's like, no, I'll just, you know, it'll be a couple of days. I'll be there soon. We'll bring her in soon though. Like, we'll be there. And he's like, okay, whatever, dude. He goes back out to the garden to see, like, because it's daytime now, so he wants to see, you know, where her body is and stuff. Or see if her body's actually in there, and the garden's back to normal. Like, the roses are back in place and stuff.
Okay.
And, yeah. So then he's like, what the fuck? And runs down into the cellar, and where they had, like, it was all kind of, like, disheveled, and things were all kind of all over the place, and there was blood on the floor. Everything's perfectly all back in order. Now. All tidy. There's no blood, nothing. And so, yeah. So he's like, what the fuck? And goes running back upstairs, and tries to call Brittany again, and leaves her a voicemail. And this is by now when he calls her Brittany.
Okay.
Like, so that whole time I was like, what the fuck is her name then if she's not Lily, you know? Yeah. And I the second time I watched, I was waiting for it. I was like, where's the name? And he didn't until he was like, Brittany, answer your phone. Like, so he gets angry about it and then goes back inside, takes a couple of Emma's pills and thinks that he sees like a very dead looking Brittany in the reflection of their countertop and like spins around and no one's there. And I'm like, this girl is fucking good, man. Because like, if she's like, because when Emma was seeing her, she'd be gone in like an instant.
True.
And I was like, fuck, man, as a ghost, she's like kept that power because, you know, magician, right? And so he kind of freaks out and takes her pills with him and just like kind of keeps popping her pills like throughout the day and stuff, right? Because they're supposed to help with.
Well, I'm glad that at least, because I was thinking that because he's a therapist, he was like giving her pills to make her hallucinate, not just, you know, feeding a hallucination.
That's what I thought was happening too, right? Yeah. But I guess maybe that's what he wanted to happen. I don't fucking know.
But then,
then
he's taking medication for no reason.
Yeah.
Like actual anti-hallucination, whatever medicine.
Yeah.
That's not good either.
No. Well, I mean, when she said that she was, like, seeing an imaginary friend as a child, I guess everybody was like, you're crazy. Like,
what a weirdo.
Right? I guess I never really had, like, an imaginary friend as a kid.
I did, and mine was a ghost.
Yes.
So,
are you sure that was an imaginary friend? Right. But I'm like, I just spent way too much time with my dog and my dolls, and my ADD, I think, did not allow me to have an imaginary friend because I was my imaginary friend.
Yeah.
So that, and I spent constant time with Catherine. So
there you go.
Yes. So he, like, kind of freaks out and sees that Emma is all packed up and ready to go to the hospital. And she was like, I was thinking about what you said, and you're right. I think I'm going to listen to what you say, like, you know what's best, kind of a thing. And he goes, listen, I don't think it's a good time for you to be going to the hospital right now. Like, let's give it a little bit of time. You said she's gone, right? You haven't seen her in a bit. She was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, let's have you not go there, right? And she goes, you don't know how happy that makes me. Like, and he's like, okay, how about we go on a trip? Just us. I'm going to run to the bank and get us some money for the trip. And she's like, okay. And he just leaves and is, like, flustered running to the bank, and gets to the bank and sees the same banker he's been dealing with this entire time, and goes up to him and is like, hey, I need to transfer some money into our funds. And he goes, one of the bank tellers can help you with this, sir. And he's like, what? He's like, no, I've been coming here for years. And he's like, yeah, well, the bank tellers handle regular customers. And he's like, no, I have an account with you. And he was like, not anymore. That account has been closed. And he's like, what? That account has been closed? And he's like, it has, sir. And so then he starts like, well, who did it? Like,
also,
freaking
that's
out.
like a big fuck you to a customer who's been coming for years.
For years, right?
Okay. Like,
yeah, and I was like, oh.
That's not customer service.
It's really not, no. Anyway, so he just starts, like, screaming about it and gets kicked out. And he, like, yells, I'm leaving! As they're, like, kicking him out.
You can't fire me, I quit!
Yeah. Let's see. So then he freaks out. He goes to the attorney's office to go yell at him because he's like, you must have stolen all the money. And he gets into the office, and the entire thing has been gone. All of this stuff is gone. Like, there's a couple of empty cardboard boxes sitting there. There's none of the, like, massive amounts of law books he had sitting on. Like, and, oh man, I'm so sad that he left behind that desk because, that's a good, that is mahogany. And
lavender?
Yeah, it's so pretty. So then he, like, kind of freaks out and decides to go home, and he stopped by his office too, but that was a useless scene. Except he yelled at his secretary. That's about it. He yells at his secretary. Oh, so then he's driving home, and he sees a very dead-looking Brittany off to the side of the road. Right? Okay. And so he slams on his brakes really quick and gets out, and he's just like, Brittany! And starts, like, running after where he thought she was standing, and he keeps seeing glimpses of her, like, walking behind trees and stuff, and so he chases her down, right? But she's not there, and then he sees her over here and sees her over there, and he's just like, oh my gosh, where are you? And stuff. And then he can't find her again. She's very much gone, and so he drives home, gets home, and, like, stumbles into the house, and Emma's like, oh, Brad, what is going on? And he's like, did you close the account? She's like, no, I didn't. And he's like, they're in on it together. He's da-da-da. And she's like, oh, Brad, let's get you into the shower. Like, you need to calm down, right? So he's in the shower, thinks he sees someone walk past the door.
Okay.
And then he opens the door to look out, and there's bloody footprints on the floor. And he's like, and stuff, right? So he kind of freaks out, gets out of the shower, and like starts kind of trying to search the house and see if there's anyone there, but he can't find anybody. And so then they show him popping a couple of Emma's pills while he's drinking with alcohol because he's a good doctor.
Yeah.
And then looks over and sees dead Brittany standing there, right? And like freaks out, drops his glass, and I'm sure they tried to make it seem like he stepped on it accidentally, but it was very much just like
crunch,
stopped on the glass. And so then he was like, oh my gosh, I stepped on my, and then looks up and she's gone again because she's real good at that, Yeah. So then he like hobbles into the room where Emma is, and she's like, oh, Brad, and runs over and starts bandaging up his foot, right? And he's like, she was here. Brittany was just here. And she was like, who's Brittany? Yeah. Why are you calling her that? That's not her name, Let's see. Oh, and he thinks that he sees her by the pool, and he thinks he's just kind of like seeing her all throughout the house, right? So he then he leaves the next morning, gets dressed, goes to Brittany's apartment, and is trying to punch in his code to get in through the door, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not working. And so he's standing outside, Brittany, 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 just screaming it, right?
He didn't bring a boombox?
Nothing.
I mean, come on.
I know, right?
Jeez.
so he gets there and there's some guy standing like outside. He's like, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm here to see Brittany. I don't know her last name." And he was like, "We don't have a Brittany so-and-so living here." And he was like, "What? No, she is." And he's like, "You need to leave." And he's like, "Okay, fine." And like leaves. And so he rushes back to his office now. And I'm like, this is the moment where he should have been yelling at his secretary. Anyway, he gets back to the office and he's like frantically looking through files and stuff. And the secretary comes in and she's like, "What is going on?" And he was like, "I need the patient file on Brittany so-and-so." And she's like, "We don't have a Brittany so-and-so as a patient." He's like, "No, she was a patient from a couple years ago." And she's like, "Yeah, and we don't have her." And then Michael comes running into the office because apparently Emma called him. And, but like they didn't clarify that very well. I don't know if they were like in the same office building and maybe he heard that, because I'm like, how else would he have known to come in here, right?
Yeah.
Because he was like, "Well, Emma says you're being irrational and stuff," right? And he's like, "What is happening? What is he doing?" And the secretary, who is like a head taller than him, is like, "He's looking for a file on a patient named Brittany so-and-so, but that's not her name. Her name is like Rachel Featherstone. And she has multiple personalities." And he's like, "Okay." And I'm like, I don't understand what that has to do with anything, but it's fine. Yeah. So he's like, "Listen, Brad, calm the fuck down. What are you doing, man? Like, Emma's worried about you. We're all worried about you." And he's like, "Don't be worried about me. I'm fine." And like goes running home, right? And like, anyway, so he goes home and Emma's painting again and is like, "Are you trying to do something to me? You're trying to do something to me." She's like, "What would I be doing to you, Brad?" You know? And he was like, "I had everything planned and you ruined it. You ruined it like you always ruined it." And then like starts chasing her down and she's wearing high heels. And I'm like, the only way she outran him right now is because he had stepped on glass. That's the only like explanation I can think of, because she's like little footsteps, like, and so she runs into the bedroom, slams the door and locks it. And he's like still yelling at her down the hallway as he's trying to get to the door. And she turns and there's Brittany. And she's like, "He's taking this well. He's really not going to be very hard for us to get him in the mental hospital now." And I was like, Brittany, the exposition dump. Like, yeah, no kidding. You know? And she's like, "Yeah, did you get everything taken care of over at your condo?" And she's like, "Yeah." I mean, it's funny because Brad was the one who told me to get rid of my other personality in the first place. And I was like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Okay.
She just keeps saying weird shit that I'm like, what is happening here? Like, what? Why do they keep giving you these weird ass lines that mean nothing for the rest of the movie? They literally could have just said, "Oh, she's depressed."
Yeah.
Because, like, this multiple personality thing does not come in handy anywhere else in the movie. It's not like one personality's in love with Brad and one personality wants to actually help Emma. Like, she very clearly seems like, well, I wanted to help Brad at first because I thought his wife was crazy, but I realized Emma's actually not. Now I want to be friends with her. Like...
Yeah, weird.
I don't get the DID thing. Anyway, so Brad gets there and starts like pounding on the door and is like, "Emma, you open this door." And she's like, "We've called the police." And he's like, We? Who's in there with you? Oh my God, Emma, and stuff. And anyway, then the cops show up. And it's the same fucking cop that showed up the first time, right? And so the cop's like, "Open the door right now, blah, 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 blah," right? And so they get the door, or, you know, the cops are then talking to Emma. And I didn't understand this scene at all. She was just like, "Well, I mean, he's been seeing visions for a while and stuff, but like, you know, he's not a danger to me. He's not a danger to me at all. He'd never hurt me." And they were like, "Okay, all right then. So you're good if we leave?" She's like, "Yeah, he's not gonna hurt me."
Then why did you call the police?
Right? I don't get it, right? What? I was like, I don't understand this part of the movie, because she was making it seem like, well, I mean, yeah, he's crazy, but he's not gonna hurt me.
Yeah. Meanwhile, he's banging down your door and then you call the police.
Yeah. And so I didn't get this part of like, why are you telling the police that he's not?
Maybe she didn't want them involved, but she wanted that to be like a record, you know?
I think so. But the cop was like, "Okay, well, we're gonna keep hanging out." Like, he's like, "We'll keep doing some security perimeter, you know, like we'll be in the area."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Okay, have a good night." And so
have a good day, officer.
Yeah. So then Brad is sleeping down on the couch, right? And she's sleeping up in the bedroom with the door locked, and he calls her on his cell phone. And he's like, "I just don't understand where things went wrong. I love you, Emma." And she was like, "Oh, Brad." You know? And he's like, I think we can get through this together, you know, we can do this and stuff. And she's like, oh, Brad. And then he like turns over and there's Brittany standing there, very dead, looking down over the couch for him. And he's like, ah! Like freaks out and flies off the couch. And this scene, his acting was, he did really good.
Nice.
Because he's like sobbing and she comes downstairs to see him and he's like, Emma, she was there. And I was like,
Aww.
Don't make me feel for you, dude. Like, I don't like you. But I was like, aw. Like, and he's like, she was a real person and I loved her and I'm sorry I had an affair. And she was like, you scumbag. And I'm like, he's like very much having a psychotic break right now.
Yeah.
And she's just like, eh. And then gets up and he is, what was he saying to her? I can't remember what he said exactly, but he slapped, oh no, he was like, you killed her as she was a real person. And she's like, I'm a real person too, Brad. And he slaps her. And then Brittany's like, don't you lay another hand on her. She's like standing there suddenly, right? And he's like, she's right there. And she's like, where, Brad? Who are you talking about? And he's like grabbing her face, trying to make her look. So she knees him in the junk and runs out the door, right? And then Brittany kind of is just like, as she walks out and following after Emma outside, right? And they're just walking along the edge of the pool, and he grabs a knife from the kitchen and follows her out there, right?
Okay.
And she's like, he's just like, Emma, come on, I don't understand what's happening. And she was like, she's not really there, Brad. She's not really there. And Brittany's like, I'm real. You know me. I was one of your patients. And he was like, but I love her and stuff. And Emma's like, well, you're married to me, Brad. Who do you actually love? You know, like, and she's not really there. You have to kill her like I killed her and stuff, right? And she's just like egging him on to kill Brittany. And Brittany's just like, I'm the one you really love. Like, and so you're like, oh, okay, so are they trying to egg each other on to get him to kill like either one of them or possibly himself kind of a thing? Yeah. Like, I just didn't understand. Anyway, and then he like holds up the knife and is like staring at it. And the girls are like, whoa, okay, he actually has a knife right now, right? And then it just goes to another scene where the cop is standing there again. And he was like, were you ever one of his patients? Did he actually try to harm you? How did you get in the house and stuff? And then I was like, oh, okay, so did he kill Emma for like the halfest of seconds, okay? And then no, it's Emma standing there and she was like, no, he wasn't my doctor. We were just married. And I was like, it's the same fucking cop that was here like 30 seconds ago. Like, what?
You know the story.
What are you talking about, dude? Like, what the fuck? So then we see Brad, who's like, the cops are like putting him in the car. And he's just like, no, I know what I saw. Why are you doing this to me? And she's like, I don't know what he's doing, you know? And he's like, well, we'll get him taken care of, ma'am, right? And then they leave. And then the next day it shows the painting Emma had been working on. And it was a painting of little Lily. And then suddenly shows the hospital. And I was like, why did we need to see that right there? Like, it should have been at the very end of the movie, personally. Anyway, but we see that. And then we see that Brad is in the hospital in a straitjacket lying on a bed. And, and the same doctor who had been, like, was going to admit her before was just like, well, I mean, he's completely gone at this point. You know, he's going to be here probably for the rest of his life and stuff. And I was like, over one thing, like, what? Anyway, he's like, yeah, so he's gonna be here forever, and I'm just so sorry you have to deal with that and stuff. And she's like, well, yeah, I guess, can I at least say goodbye? And he's like, yeah, that'd probably be good. And so she goes over to him and is like, just kind of like, oh, touching him and stuff. And then she leans in close and she goes, nice try, and kisses him on the forehead and turns and leaves, right? And so, like, she very clearly, you know, obviously knew all that nonsense had been going on. Who knows for how long. Obviously, Brittany must have told her, right?
Yeah.
And then they show Brittany and Emma later that night, and they both have wine, and they're kind of laughing and stuff. And they're like, he got exactly what he deserved. Ha, 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 ha. And make the little pinky promise. And then that's the end of the movie.
What?
Yeah.
Why would Brittany turn on him?
I guess because she just decided she liked Emma more and she didn't like what he was doing to her.
They needed like a concrete reason.
Yeah. And like they really did not show, I wish, because we kept getting a bunch of nonsense. It was such a long movie, and the first half of the movie is him making Emma think she's crazy,
right?
And literally the second half of the movie is her making him think he's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, obviously this is a Lifetime movie, but like, I don't know if it actually is, but like, there's no way it's not. And so
ABC Family.
But I'm like, I wish I'd seen more montages of her and Brittany spending time together.
Yeah.
Because then it would have been like, oh, I can totally see why she turned on Brad because, you know, or maybe if it had been more of Brad being like, oh, well, you're just doing it wrong then, Brittany, like, get, you know, like, just,
yeah,
you need to be doing this differently, and like showing how aggressive he was and how terrible of a person he is, kind of a thing.
Yeah, otherwise it just seems like a weird switch.
Yeah, it's just a weird random switch. And I'm like, there's also a lot that happens in this that like never gets explained. Obviously, Emma had her attorney transferring all of the money out for her to use later. They never say that.
Yeah.
You know? Her attorney was okay just packing
like,
all that shit up.
Yeah.
Just leaving town. His secretary was suddenly in on it with Emma because like Brittany was her name, right? Like, I don't get this multiple personality shit. Like, was she originally Brittany or was she originally Rachel? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
it seems like she was Rachel and Brittany as a personality, but why does that apply? Why can't she just be a person that he liked and that
was suffering depression or some shit? I don't know. Like,
okay.
I mean, I'm sure it was probably to play into the whole, like, oh, she was real, but nobody knows who I'm talking about kind of a thing. But, like, why couldn't she, like, obviously that's how they got the secretary in on it, was for her to be like, no, she's not a real person. Her name was actually this kind of a thing. But, like, did she actually have to have DID for that to be a thing? Like,
yeah, and wouldn't the therapist have known that she had DID? And so, like, he would have known that was a personality and not her?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm so confused with that. I have no fucking clue with that. And I don't get it. I don't get it. And so he obviously was making her take medication that was supposed to, like,
increase hallucination.
But not, because then he started taking it himself.
Yeah. I'm confused.
And I'm baffled. I'm truly baffled by where the plot went with this, because, like,
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I'm confused.
Also, just don't. I went because I had no idea. There was no trailer to see when I watched it on Amazon, and so I went and looked it up on YouTube. Don't look it up on YouTube. It's the entire movie in the trailer. Oh. Like, you find out that Brittany is not Lily, and that she kills Brittany, but doesn't kill Brittany, and Brittany actually turns on him in the trailer of the movie.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like,
I hate that.
Oh, well, now I fucking know. Like, kind of a thing, you know? Yeah. Like, I didn't know everything, but I was like, oh, okay, that's ruined it for me, you know? So I'm like, it's definitely one of those cases of the movie.
Well, like, I also want to know, like, because Brittany didn't come back until, like, partway through the movie, right? Yeah. Or, like, Lily didn't come back. Yeah. So, like, what was he doing to make her think she was crazy before?
I don't know. Which it begs to, like, wonder, was she actually crazy? Was she actually seeing hallucinations? And he just thought, let's play it up.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Because I'm like, I'm sure she definitely has, like, crazy-ass trauma from when she was a kid and her dad being an absolute dick. But, like, okay. I don't know.
So how do you rate it?
Sucky. Like, all these people that rated it, like, the 5 point whatever, or like, half and half liked it, are the... yeah, get him, girl. He had it coming kind of people. I swear. That's the only people who could have liked this movie, because it was a shit movie. And the acting was okay at times. Most of their lines sucked. But I'm like, so it was the actors doing, like, all of the hard work. Yeah. Like, they were the only ones pulling it along. And it's just, yep.
Do not recommend?
Don't recommend. It was dumb. Like, it was so stupid. So, like, I was watching it, took a nap partway through, because I was like, I can't.
I'm done.
And then I woke back up and, like, okay, let's finish watching this.
Oh, gosh.
Yep. And then I had to watch it a second time to take all my notes. So.
Yeah, I feel like I need to watch it a second time, even though I haven't even watched it. Like... but that didn't make sense for you. Like,
right.
It didn't clear anything up.
Like, I feel like there were things that they thought... like, maybe they had planned out in the story and maybe just, like, cut the scene for time.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
then you cut the other shit too.
You need to actually have,
Don't have gaps in your story.
Don't have gaps in your story and expect me to be like, oh yeah, that's what was the thing.
It's like, fine. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because I'm like, who's editing this? And did they watch the rest of the movie?
No.
Or do you have like 6 people editing it and they're just like, we'll take this part out, save some time. Like,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a confusing one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was just like, why did this happen? Who is this? What, why?
What genre would you consider that?
Lifetime.
Okay.
Just
like drama?
Drama, yeah. Because it definitely wasn't a horror movie and stuff,
Suspense
right? Like
drama?
Yeah.
No. Psychological drama?
Yeah, psychological drama. Yeah. Okay. It definitely was not a thriller. I was not thrilled. I was bored.
Okay.
That is for sure.
Cool.
Yes. So.
Awesome. I enjoyed the telling anyway.
Good.
I got some good laughs in there, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it too.
Yeah, our 2 hour.
Yeah, I know, it's a long one. Maybe leave some comments below of really, really, really bad. It doesn't even have to be horror movies. It's just any bad movie that you want us to watch and review. And we will do that.
Cool.
See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.